Isaac.
Yep.
And Isaac's son is Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel.
Yep. It's all there.
Right? Now, by the way,
So you've got the 12 sons. We talked about Reuben, Simeon, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Benjamin, Zebulon, Joseph, and those are all the tribes, and Levi.
right, now, what basically happened is Jacob had 12 sons, and you can see them there: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, as you mentioned. There they are. And they split into two nations. And the two nations basically were, each nation, Judah went to the south with its capital at Jerusalem, and all the other brothers, pretty well, Benjamin went with Judah, and Levi went originally to the north in Israel, and then got the king kicked them back to Judah. But that's neither here. That's not important for our discussion. The point is that in Genesis, the name Israel was given not to Judah's sons, not to Judah's sons, but to Joseph's sons, Ephraim, Manasseh. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I want to read you from this a little bit about this, Mrs. Steele, because what happened is, it's interesting to note. Tradition records that the royal princess Tamar Tefi went to Ireland in 583 BC, and she was the direct descendant of King David of the Bible. She was the daughter of Zedekiah. And she went with Jeremiah, the famous prophet, and his scribe was called Baruch. And it's interesting, of course, Jeremiah and Baruch were all buried in Ireland, and they brought the stone of Scone with them. And that's the pillar stone, and let's just get that up here, because we're going to hear more about that in the news. That's called the Stone of Destiny, right, Mrs. Steele? Blue, just keep the camera on there, and there it is. There's the English throne, and this is where we left off a bit last week. But that stone there, underneath the throne of England, which is basically David's throne, that stone was taken to Ireland, and then it went to Scotland, and then went to England. It was in Westminster Abbey, and now it's headed back to Scotland. It's in Scotland now, and eventually that stone will go back to Jerusalem at the second coming. Did you want to add anything about that?
No.
Did you? Now, for those who are interested in it, let me just go into a couple of things here about this, Mrs. That I wanted to just go through a couple of things that's interesting. Basically, the lost 10 tribes became known as the Cimmerians, the Scythians, and the Goths. And the Cimmerians laid the basis for Western Celtic civilization. And when you take a look at Celtic mythology, religion, legends, linguistics, nomenclature, and archaeological finds, they're now able to definitely trace through the identities, which means basically that Britain and America have the right to call themselves Israel. But modern-day Israel, you must ask yourself the question, if it's a Jewish homeland, being that the Jews love tradition, why wouldn't they call their homeland, if it was a Jewish homeland, why wouldn't they call their modern-day homeland the name of their ancient homeland, which was Judah. But they don't.
That's true.
It's called Israel. Isn't that shocking?
Sure.
Very shocking.
Yep, it's real shocking.
So it leads people, when you start to look at what's going on, and you look at the amount of money that Britain and America gives to this land, you start to realize that when you understand the fact that behind the scenes these monarchies use peoples as fronts, you start to realize that what's really happened here is they've used the Jews as fronts in Palestine, using the Jews to fight the Arabs, using the Jews as the cover, as the beard. Meanwhile, it really is controlled by the Bank of England, the British throne, and America, the United States and Britain. Yeah.
Well, it's all controlled by the Vatican.
Well, the
Britain,
fact that the
monarchy, the Order of the Garter, I mean, they're all in control. Those are the secret societies. I mean, they're all in your
well,
face.
make the connection between. So the throne of David is now controlled by the chair of Peter. You're saying is that
so.
right?
I think it is, and you know, it will be moved. I mean, it has to go back. It has to go back to Jerusalem at some point. That's where the throne has to go back. So that's the stone, the destiny
We'll put
stone
it on
has
the-
to go back. So there's the journey, the migration.
Now that's the
Judah
journey.
carrying it.
In Ezekiel 21, the scriptures say, "I will overturn, 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 and it shall be." What's that say? Sorry. It will overturn, 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 and it shall be more until he comes whose right it is, and I will give it to him. Meaning, of course, Christ.
So it has to make that journey all the way back. It's got to go all the way back where it started.
Yeah. So it's
And when the temple is rebuilt, all those things have to happen first. So that's all in the making now. And
Yes.
we can see the journey. It goes to Tara, then it goes to Scone, and then it goes to London.
right.
And of course, the Queen is from David's seed.
Right.
The only people that can sit on that throne have to be from David's seed.
Right. That's the covenant that the El Shaddai made
that's right.
with. Exactly. Now, of course, the Union Jack is Jacob, the union of the 12 sons, and of course now this
That's an
is
interesting coin you showed me
because
before. It's
It's a coin minted in 1603 by King James I of the United Kingdom. And the inscription in Latin reads Facium eros in gentem unam.
I
which-
will make of them one people. And
Which
that's Ezekiel 37:22. Wow.
Yeah. And the reason why he was
A pluribus unum.
that's I will make them of one people. In other words, meaning that the brothers who split between two nations, Israel and Judah, the scriptures say that once again they will be grafted together and be brought back and made one people once again. It's also interesting to note that the 10 lost tribes left the throne of David because of taxation, increase in taxation.
Well, wasn't it
The
Solomon
same-
over?
The same reason why
Tax them, yeah.
why Manasseh left Ephraim, why America broke away from Britain.
Yep,
Taxation.
exactly. So Manasseh is really a combination of all the different tribes, really. That's
No,
what Manasseh is. Yeah,
is-
it's got a combination, a pluribus unum, which is
You don't
all
know
will-
Manasseh's
will-
separate. Manasseh
Manasseh
is Joseph's.
I know, but other tribes are mixed in there, aren't they, in Canada too, and the U.S.?
Well, Canada
little
is
bit of a
more.
mix in there.
Canada is not. Canada is more Ephraim and Simeon
Yeah.
and Reuben. Reuben is France, and Simeon. If you Professor Lewis identified Quebec as being Reuben and Simeon,
Well,
but Canada is basically an Ephraimite nation, and of course
Of course, and that makes sense.
now
You've
that
got
brings that brings a good point, because that brings us to the point about the emblem